Hello and welcome to the Vocations View podcast. Vocations View is brought to you from the Office of Vocations and the Office of Communications of the Diocese of Harrisburg. My name is Father Jonathan Sawicki, and I serve as the Director of Vocations for the Diocese of Harrisburg. In this role, I try to assist the people of God here in South Central Pennsylvania in understanding how God is tugging at their hearts or inspiring them to serve Him and His holy people, the Church. Today, we welcome Sister Christina Roberts. Sister Christina is a member of the Sisters Servants of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, based in Immaculata, Pennsylvania. Sister Christina, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Tell us about yourself. Okay, but before you do, full disclosure, this is the first religious sister that we're having on the podcast, and I am biased toward both Sister Christina and her community. Her community has been serving in our diocese for probably 130 years, and they still have several missions in our diocese, and they educated me when I was in high school, and it was a religious sister of this community that basically said to the vocation director at the time, with Jonathan, it's not a question of if, but when. And when I heard that Sister Rita O'Leary said that, I admitted defeat and asked for an application to seminary. And not only that, Sister Christina was a fresh out of college, energetic, and very pious parishioner in Gettysburg who was open to the call of God. When I was serving there with Father Bernie Pistoni I was the assistant pastor at that parish at St. Francis, and Sister Christina was an active parishioner. So Sister Christina, take it away. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am from a small town near Reading called Oley. So I grew up there, and I was raised Catholic. I mean, my family was always, very supportive in instilling the Catholic faith in me. We always prayed together, went to mass. My grandfather was a deacon. So I was, just even as a young child was always fascinated by the church. And when I grew up, I went to public school, so I didn't really know any sisters. So the idea of a sister was cool to me, but I didn't really have anything to in my mind, I was just picturing oh, they're so holy and all they do is pray and they're so perfect, and that's cool, but I don't know if I could do that because I'm not perfect or anything like that, So that was my sort of image of a sister growing up. And then it wasn't until I went to college, I had friends in the Newman Club at Penn State, and I had friends who were discerning priesthood, religious life, and I was like, wow, people actually do this. Okay, I just kind of felt there was something there. And then during that time, I was busy in college. I did date a little bit, and it was kind of something that was just in the back of my mind. So it really wasn't until I got my first teaching job and moved to Gettysburg. I was teaching middle school and high school math, that the idea of religious life really became a lot more real to me. I loved what I was doing. I loved teaching, but I always felt like there was something missing. This is what I felt like I was doing what I was meant to do, but there was something more. And so actually it was Father Sawicki who I really first heard of the IHMs from at the time. And I was like, oh, they're from not that far away from where I'm from. How come I've never heard of them? And like I said, I went to public school, so it wasn't like I was taught by any sisters or anything. So the more that I learned about the IHMs and found out that they taught and things like that, I was like, I really need to check these sisters out. And one thing led to another, and I entered the IHMs in September 2012. So currently I am in Westchester, and I live at St. Agnes Convent, and I'm teaching high school theology at Bishop Shanahan High School, and I absolutely love it.
That is awesome. Sister, what's it like living in community in the convent? So as a diocesan priest, I've been blessed. I've always lived with at least one other priest, from Gettysburg through St. Mary's, where I served as pastor at St. Mary's in York. There was a resident priest, the hospital chaplain. I am now the resident priest of Father Brommer at the cathedral. That's one other person. What's it like living in community with other sisters?
Well, it's interesting. As of now, I am one of 12. So I've lived in every house I've lived in. There's been at least 9 or 10 sisters. So I've had a good experience of like living with a lot of different people. And this is the third convent I've lived in since the mother house. So it's wonderful to, have the time together to pray together and have our meals together and things like that. And just to get to know and learn so much from all of the sisters that I live with, who've had like so many more experiences than I've had. It's very interesting. Like we all have very different personalities. So it's definitely, an adjustment. I lived by myself for 3 years before I entered the community. So living in community was like a huge adjustment for me. I was not used to that. And there's only 4 people in my family. So this is definitely a lot more people. And, being like on a schedule where we pray together before we go to school or mass or school in the morning. And then coming together to pray in the evenings and having dinner together, and things like that. But, as with anything, any, vocation, it can be challenging at times, but, it's definitely been like such a learning opportunity for me to learn a lot about myself and, just how I interact with others, and, takes a lot of patience at times, but, it's definitely, I think, helps us to mold us into the people that, God has called us to be. And we just learn so much from each other, and we're able to, even though it's not always perfect, we're able to really, support each other, when we need it. And that's always a blessing.
I could go in 2 directions. One, I think it'll be the kind of shorter direction, which is, so you studied at Penn State University, which is a good school. How has living in community and being with other sisters and sisters older than yourself and perhaps teaching for decades longer than you've been alive, how has that made you a better teacher?
That's a good question. Well, it's helped me to really like be open to, some of their suggestions, experiences, and things like that. Like you said, they've had so much more experience than I have, and school is obviously very different nowadays than it was. I mean, they had classes that were like, some of them had, I don't know, like 100 kids in like first grade or something crazy like that. And I cannot even imagine that. I'm like, wow. I have my biggest class at Shanahan last year was 35. And that was a challenge to have that many. But, the sisters have just like developed like so many good, practices and things as well. Like I was a math teacher, up until last year. I taught theology, or I am teaching theology now. But even just some of the ways that they teach math, they have their math maintenance sheets. I mean, they've been involved in helping to write, math books. I know some of our language arts books and things like that we've used in the grade schools. I mean, I only taught math, but just the ways, different, methods and things that they've come up with have been a huge help. And especially for me, it has been an adjustment going from, I taught 3 years in public school and then going to a Catholic school. So I taught in a Catholic grade school for 4 years before going to high school. And just, having that experience has just been so good for me. It's really, I would say, helped me to be really prepared and really creative with things. Like if something isn't working, I'm willing to be like, okay, I'm going to try something new. I'm willing to like go talk to one of the sisters I live with or work with or whatever and be like, hey, this isn't working. Like, what do you suggest? And just being willing to kind of take that risk of doing something new and something different. To do the best I can. So.
One of my principals when I was in elementary school at St. Mary's in Coltmont is one of your retired sisters at Camilla Hall, Sister Marie-Therese Hirsch. And Sister Marie related to my mom, who was teaching in that school, that when she started at Sacred Heart School in Lancaster in the late 1950s, she was like 19 years old, plopped down in a first grade room with 60 children. And the only thing the superior of the convent said, don't smile for the first month of classes. Because that was...
Yes.
and my mom remembers being told that. And, it's because if you smile, you show weakness. And the only way that you keep 60 kids... Now, But again, teaching and also religious life has changed a lot since what a lot of people remember when every parish in our diocese had a convent full of nuns. And I think that I would hope that people who are tuning in today see like, well, Sister Christina, she's one of these young women who's willing to give her life to Christ and in service of, in love of him and in service of his holy people. So my next deeper question is, how is becoming a sister, you're not just set apart by what we can see, okay, is like, oh, sister wears, and you could, in Philadelphia, you could spot a Mac a mile away because of the trademark blue. And I really thought that's why you wanted to become an Immaculate Heart Sister, was because of the blue and white, and it just reminded you of Penn State, right? But really, not just what sets apart visibly, but also interiorly. How has this helped you become closer to the Lord? How in your prayer has it grown, and how have you grown in otherness or holiness since entering the convent?
Well, first of all, blue is my favorite color, so it worked out pretty well. But I think I would say the biggest, if looking back over the past 8 years since I've entered the community, I would say the biggest thing that I've really learned and how I've been able to grow closer in my relationship with the Lord, not only through living in community, but also through my apostolate, through teaching and interacting with not just the students, but parents and, the other teachers, my coworkers and things like that, is just really feeling like whatever person that the Lord has placed in front of me at the time, that I'm called to love that person in that time, in that moment. It was definitely an adjustment. I mean, obviously we are all called to do that. But going from teaching as a layperson to teaching as a sister is like, wow, when you first start out teaching, you're dealing with all the, discipline and all of those things. And how do I handle this situation? And, trying to stay calm in certain situations and things like that. But really realizing like, I'm sharing, especially as a religious, like the love that God is sharing with me, I'm sharing with others. And, to really make that love present and that love known in whatever interaction I have. But obviously in school, there's discipline and, trying to have that classroom management can be a challenge, especially with a number of students in the room. But, how can I help them to grow closer to Christ by, guiding them through whatever the rules are and things like that, and just giving them the best learning experience, possible. So I would just say, through my prayer, through my learning from, community life with the other sisters, that love that I've received, taking that and passing that on and saying, how can I share that with this person, whoever is in front of me in that moment, in the best way that I possibly can.
That's great. And you mentioned that word apostolate. What does having an apostolate mean? So you are a sister, that's who you are. And then, so what is the apostolate?
So that's basically like your ministry. So we're primarily, our focus is education, but not every single sister nowadays teaches. We have a lot of sisters that are, work in parishes. We have sisters that work in like literacy centers, or they're directors of religious education and different things like that. We have sisters that work, teach at our college and all of those things. So our apostolate, our ministry is primarily education, but it's just, lived out a little bit differently,
Sure,
for each sister.
So you had a special event. We're recording this on August 18th. You had a very special event on August 9th. Tell us about it.
Well, I made my final vows, which in other words, also called our perpetual profession, which I think is a little bit more of an accurate way to describe it. Final meaning like it's the last time that I'll be publicly professing them like in a new sort of way. So there was a big mass. It was very beautiful. Bishop Senior was the celebrant, and we professed our vows to our general superior. And it was such a beautiful day. But what that means is perpetual profession, meaning like perpetual ongoing, like I'm professing these vows for the rest of my life. So making this as like a final commit, that's where the final part comes in, but a final commitment. Whereas 5 years ago, I made first vows, which at that point I was only making them temporarily. I would renew them every year for the first 3 years. And then the last 2 years, I renewed them for 2 years. But, through that whole, it's a total of 8-year long discernment process, I discerned that, this is what I feel the Lord is calling me to. And that this is what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life. So, making that, that commitment, was, it was a beautiful day. And it was, interesting considering like, the virus and everything. It wasn't exactly what we had expected. I was my family was able to be there, thank God. But it was much smaller than expected. But that did not take away from like anything, looking back, because it was just so beautiful to do that, to make that commitment, and to just have the support of the sisters there and my family. And, it just, it's so hard to put into words. I'm still kind of like processing like, wow, this happened and this is amazing.
So as someone who watched the recording of the live stream, because I couldn't be there in person, ladies and gentlemen, if you could have seen the smile on Sister Christina's face, it was from ear to ear, and it lit up the room. You could tell that there's an old saying that joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. And I'm pretty sure that there was the presence of God in that celebration a week and a half ago. Sister, so as a nun, as a religious sister, you teach, you pray, you have no hobby. You're not allowed to have any hobbies, right?
Oh no, this is the one thing that really attracted me to the IHMs. Was I was like, wow, they're real people. They're normal, is what I kept saying.
I said to a mutual friend of ours a couple of nights ago, the school minister of Bishop Shanahan is an old friend of mine. I said to Father Donia, I've never met an introverted Immaculate Heart nun. Okay, I've never met an introverted sister of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. What are your hobbies?
Well, I love music. When I started out at Penn State, I was a music major. So I play the violin, and I still continue to play. I'm grateful that I have a lot of opportunities, at any of the parishes that I've been at. I played at the Mother House for different things. And I just enjoy that. And then I also discovered that I could sing when I was in formation. I sang before that, but one of the sisters at our Mother House got me to start cantoring, and I was like, never would have thought I would do that. So it's very interesting when you enter religious life, you find all these talents that you never knew you had. So music is a very big part of my life. But I also enjoy running. We have a nun run every year, not this year, but I enjoy just getting outside and just enjoying
a nun run.
Beautiful weather. Yeah, we started a 5K a couple years back, yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's what we call the nun run. And
does it take place in Stone Harbor at Nuns Beach?
No, it takes place at the Mother House. It starts at the Mother House. It goes across the street to Immaculata's campus, through Camilla, because it benefits Camilla, and then back. So it's pretty cool. But it's just a really fun day. Anyways, but so I just love being outside and just enjoying beautiful weather, exercise, things like that. Also, big sports fan. Obviously, Penn State fan, but also Philly sports fan. But I enjoy doing a lot of things. I enjoy cooking, baking. Got into baking this year. I just find sometimes when you do new things, it's just it's another way to, I don't know.
What advice would you give, especially a young woman? What advice would you give a young person who is feeling a tug at their heart or this possible desire to serve God in His church?
Biggest advice I would give is definitely to continue your prayer life. That time is definitely the most important. Even if it's just like 10 minutes a day of just sitting and maybe with scripture, just sitting quietly and listening to the Lord, and what he's asking you to do. And, I also would recommend a spiritual director. I know that when I was discerning, my spiritual director at the time, Father Bateman, was like really instrumental and just really helped me to kind of like, talk through, what I was feeling, what I felt God was saying to me in my prayer. And then just, I would just recommend, if you have any close friends that you're willing to share and to talk about it with, I think that's always good too, because I think at first for me, I was like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think if I say this? What are they going to think? They're probably going to think, oh, why would she do that? She could never do that. So I think, if it's something that you feel that God is calling you to, it is helpful to be able to have a few close people that you can talk to about it as well. That I found that for me, that was very, very helpful. I was fortunate. A friend of mine from Penn State was a seminarian at Mount St. Mary's at the time when I was discerning, and I would go down every once in a while and just have a chat with him because I knew he understood,
Sure.
The process and all of that. So I was very fortunate to have some, really good people in my life as I was discerning.
Awesome. Sister, thank you so much.
Thank you, Father.
Everybody, thank you for joining us for this podcast. Please be sure to follow this podcast and even more presentations from the Diocese of Harrisburg on our various social media platforms, the Diocesan Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram, and YouTube. God bless you all, and thanks for joining Vocations View.
Thank you for listening to the Vocations View podcast, brought to you by the Office of Vocations and Office of Communications of the Diocese of Harrisburg. For more information, or to reach out to me, Father Jonathan Sawicki, the Director of the Office of Vocations, please go to www.harrisburgpriest.com. God bless you and have a good day.